street, put them in cages, confine them to an area. Now, what they were allowed to do, had to go to court in order to do it in Cleveland, was to get a much larger area. But what we saw in political conventions in the past, the last one that we had in 2012, what they would do is move them quite a ways away from the actual event itself, have a metal cage. You could go in there and you could carry your signs. They even had a little soapbox with a microphone, and you could all take turns to try to get up there and say something so far away that nobody could see you or hear you. But the fact that people are going to be able to carry firearms is something that really concerns the police union chief. Now, he spoke out before, and I've got some news. I'm going to talk about that later, about what the police chief said. He was very concerned about the fact that people are going to be carrying guns. I've got to say, we've gone to rallies where people have been carrying guns because it was a protest of Second Amendment rights being shut down. And we've gone to protests where people were not allowed to carry guns. And I can tell you, the only time that things got out of hand were when the protesters did not have firearms. And there's a reason for that. We'll talk about that when we come back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show on this Monday, July 18th, 2016. Today, the Republican National Convention is beginning. And, of course, Alex Jones and our reporters from InfoWars are in Cleveland. Alex is going to be joining us in the next segment to report of what he's seen so far. And, of course, what a lot of people in Cleveland have seen of us is the Hillary for Prison banner flying behind an airplane, and that's been going on for the last several days. You can get your Hillary for Prison T-shirt. That's what helped to pay for that banner that InfoWars is flying over Cleveland. Your Hillary for Prison T-shirt, same design you got on that banner. You can fly that around the crowds. You can pick that up at InfoWarsStore.com. Also, as a thank you to those of you who have helped to finance this operation by buying the products that we sell, getting us, paying for the expenses of us to go to the convention, to fly that banner, to do the many things that we do. We offer sales from time to time. We have a major sale on one of our major products, that's DNA Force. It's still 25% off at InfoWarsLife.com. That's not going to last very long. We're getting close to the end of this sale. We're getting close to the end of the supplies. And, of course, that is one of our premium products. I think it's perhaps our most expensive product because it is loaded with bio-PQQ compound. There's 175 clinical studies that show what that compound can do for you. It's also a very expensive ingredient. There's a lot of different ingredients in DNA Force, but that particular ingredient that it has so much of that's so rare is also very expensive. It costs about $30,000 per batch, just that one ingredient in DNA Force. So it's a premier product. We're offering it at 25% off while supplies last. You can get that at InfoWarsLife.com. So get that. Get your Hillary for Prison T-shirt. Get into the spirit of the conventions that are going to be happening this week and next week. Of course, the Republican National Convention is going to be followed up immediately by the Democrat National Convention. InfoWars will be there for that one as well. In Philadelphia, I will be there next week, switching places with Alex. Now, as we're looking at, as the Hill says, the curtain goes up on the Trump show. They're talking about, and we have some people wringing their hands about the fact that open carry is allowed in Cleveland. Quite frankly, I think that's a good thing. Even though the chief of police, the chief of the police union, I should say, in Cleveland is concerned about that. He's actually calling for the Ohio governor, John Kasich, to ban open carry in Cleveland for the duration of the Republican convention. And I got to say, when we talk about the rule of law, that means the rule of law for everybody. That means that the governor doesn't just get to arbitrarily throw out the laws that are there. Neither do the police. Rule of law means that even the people in government, but especially the people in government, are under the law. And what we have seen from experience is that not only do you have a situation where when we look at what happened in Nice, with the truck driver going for a mile. As I was driving this last weekend with my wife, I said, think about how long it takes you to drive a mile. We heard that this truck driver was going very slowly when a motorcyclist tried to pull up beside him and tried to get into the cab to stop him from running over people at a slow speed. He swerved. He knocked the motorcyclist over and ran over him. And then he sped up, they said, to about 40 miles an hour. Now, even if he was going 40 miles an hour the entire time, and he wasn't. Even if he was going 40 miles an hour, do you realize how long he was able to run people down? Just do this as a thought experiment. Just do it. Kind of clock yourself and get a feel for how long it takes to drive a mile as you're driving down the streets. If he was going 60 miles an hour, it would take him a full minute to go a mile. He went a bit over a mile. If he was going 40 miles an hour, there'd be about a minute and a third, about a minute, 20 seconds that he's just mowing people down, and nobody could do anything about it. Why? Because in France, they don't own firearms. So that's one of the advantages of an armed public. If he tried that in Texas, I can guarantee you that before he was able to mow people down for 1 or 2 minutes without any interference, there would be some people who would pull out their guns and shoot him, not waiting for the police to do something about it. So that's one advantage of it. But the other advantage that people don't realize, and this is truly what the Second Amendment is about. People accuse us of saying that we're trying to overthrow the government, or this is dangerous talk to say that the Second Amendment is there to control the government. But it is there in the same way that we had nuclear weapons during the Cold War, as mutual assured defense, okay? Mutual assured destruction if a war starts. So the presence of firearms has a restraining effect. This is something Robert Heinlein, remember the famous quote from the science fiction writer, he said, an armed society is a polite society. You know where that really came from? That really came from the Civil War. There was a British colonel who came over, wrote a book, 3 months in the southern states. When he was going through the South, he said, I've never seen a society where everybody was armed and where everybody was so polite. Yeah, it has a polite effect on people when you have a lot of protesters carrying firearms peacefully. Stay with us. Alex Jones is going to be calling in and taking the next segment from Cleveland. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. This is David Knight in Austin. We're going to be going to Alex Jones in Cleveland. He and the InfoWars crew are there covering the Republican National Convention, which begins today. Of course, one of the things that's going to happen today, there's going to be an America First rally, the Unity Rally, that is put together by Roger Stone and Alex Jones. They're going to be having that later this afternoon. We're going to be having that as part of the show. We're going to cover some of the speeches from that rally. And Alex Jones is going to be joining us in just a few minutes to talk about what they have seen. You've already seen the back and forth with Karl Rove at the airport. Joining us now is Alex Jones. Alex.
That's right, David. Glad I got the connection through to you. We just got hooked up here right above the entrance of the RNC. We can show TV viewers out there. And, of course, subscriber for radio listeners. It's like an armed camp. And we had to go through a checkpoint with the Secret Service and others, obviously going through the car for bombs. So all the vehicles coming in are doing that, I guess, in case some of the jihadis or somebody tries to ship a car bomb or truck bomb in here. So this is the new way of life in America. And the delegates and others are all arriving. Last Friday, of course, the Republican leadership doubled back on their promise to not try to steal the nomination from Trump. They actually tried to do it again, but most of the delegates understood they were pledged to the voters from their towns and cities, their precincts, so that did not happen. So it appears they're not going to try to block Donald J. Trump from getting the Republican nomination to hopefully become the 45th president of the United States. Now, again, I'm coming to you live from Cleveland. And we have our reporters, Leanne McAdoo and Margaret Howe, who are down at the city park, where in about an hour I'm going to be speaking. And the reason we're here is we had to have two different lawsuits with Citizens for Trump, who had to sue the city of Cleveland for trying to block even allowing us to have a demonstration. And, of course, we even paid for the police and the security $30,000+ in America. And even after all that was paid, the city tried to double back and stop us. That, of course, is the Democrats that run the city. I have to tell you, though, that if you don't exercise the freedom, you obviously lose it, just like the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the 10th Amendment, you name it. But the police in this town and the general public, I have never, except maybe in Austin, Texas, run into more people on the street. I mean, cars are constantly stopping with listeners in on their locals, going into restaurants. About a third of the people in a restaurant I was in this morning were listeners. We're going to upload that video. The police, a lot of them are listeners, just a really awake group of Americana-type patriots of every race, color, and creed. So that certainly shows, just kind of a radar ping of just the InfoWar. Just this show has massive numbers of people listening in Cleveland, from city workers to black cab drivers. You name it, it is amazing. So very, very positive news. And Donald Trump is riding that wave, just as we're all riding that wave of rising populism. You have to ask yourself, how is the arch criminal George Soros going to try to block that? Well, just like he funded the Arab Spring to overthrow moderate states in places like Egypt and Libya and install Wahhabist Saudi Arabian-backed destabilization program, just like he brags he did that. He brags he helped launch the Syrian destabilization, just like he brags that he overthrew the elected government of Ukraine 2.5 years ago. With billions of dollars and billions of dollars of State Department money. This guy is just a piece of work. And he's not the only actor we've got who's involved in these activities, but this is all they can do. And then you've got Barack Obama at all these police funerals keep saying, hey, it's the police fault, basically. They need to reform. They need federalization, as if 5 dead cops and 10 injured cops in Dallas have anything to do with a questionable shooting in somewhere like Minnesota or Baton Rouge. But even separately, what does going to the police department in Baton Rouge, sitting out there and killing 3 officers and injuring 6 others, one of them still in critical condition, how is that justice? And then there's the statistics of 258 black men killed a year by police. Let's say half of those are unjustified, probably a lot less. And I'm not saying any of that's okay. The media, though, takes this and makes this the biggest issue in the world, just like Sheriff Clark of the county up in Milwaukee just devastated Lemon on CNN. That clip's up on Infowars.com and said, listen, you got thousands of black people being killed a year, black men, by other black men. In fact, it's over 500 a year in Chicago alone, 2,000 plus shot by other black people, 500 plus that die. I mean, this is Iraq war level dead for U.S. troops in an average year, just in Chicago. I mean, this is crazy, crazy, crazy level, and there's no discussion about it because it just shows it's violence in our cities, it's problems in our cities. It doesn't even matter if the New York Times comes out and goes, okay, a big study shows that on average, officers do not shoot black people more than they shoot white people. Is there militarization of police? Is there some of these problems? Absolutely. But escalating and shooting random cops is going to only make it worse, make them more jumpy, and make them not go into these high crime areas, no matter what color people are in them. That's why crime, for the first time in 25 years, is starting to actually go back up in many areas, because the police will not go into areas where they're going to be shot in the back. And quite frankly, I don't blame them. Who the hell would want this job out there standing on a street corner all day, knowing there's a good chance some Black Lives Matter affiliated group is going to come here to Cleveland, I think there's a good chance, and try to shoot some cops, okay? So it's just completely and totally out of control. And I personally have had the enjoyment of being threatened, and so is Paul Watson and the rest of my crew, by groups that are allowed to operate on Twitter and Facebook and you name it, calling for violence. And when they get caught calling for violence, they tell the police, oh, I'm sorry, I apologize, and nothing's done. Okay, so you have new Black Panther groups and others on TV saying, let's go kill cops today, and no one's getting in trouble. That's premeditated planning for murder. That's the organized of it, and it's because George Soros and the globalists are coming in and fomenting differences between people, exacerbating, exaggerating problems and issues to make there be basically a giant uprising or revolution in this country against local government, which is actually the enemy of the globalists, because it might stand actually against the globalization or federalization we see now happening. Same thing in Europe. Same thing is being done in France. The same situation is unfolding in a big, big way, but they're using Muslims in this case as the destabilization force, and then using the Islamic attacks that are happening all over Europe and the rapes and the rest of it as a way to then ban people's free speech that criticize it. So again, I'm here on the ground in Cleveland, coming up at about, I guess that'll be about 12:30 Central Time, 1:30, but these things usually go late, 1:30 Eastern Time. I'll be speaking at this rally, despite the threats and all the rest of it, because if we give into these threats and give up our First Amendment, we're going to give it all up. The BLM, the MoveOn.orgs, the George Soroses of the world, they've said they want to silence InfoWars. They say they want to silence DrudgeReport.com. They say they want to silence outlets and media organizations that are Americana, pro-Second Amendment, pro-First Amendment, pro-veteran, just pro-low taxes, just everything that made this country great. That's all we're trying to do, is get the foot of the globalist, the boot of the globalist off of our necks. And We understand we've been conquered by multinational corporations. We understand it's a new form of colonialism. And so all they're doing is hyping this whole thing up to create basically a civil war. And